big headliner in regards to non-conference games in September, with North Carolina getting a lot of hype, a lot of pub based on Mac Brown's successful first season and lifting a 2-win program to 7-6 in a bowl victory. Sam Howell had a tremendous freshman campaign with 38 touchdown passes, and North Carolina's recruiting, speaking of recruiting, has been off the charts as well. So this one's got to be one that already at this stage of the offseason, people are talking about Auburn and North Carolina.
You know, you talk about Auburn and North Carolina. Auburn seems to be, it's not seems to be. They've been regulars in that particular kickoff classic in Atlanta, Georgia. And I mean, for good reason. Auburn is literally an hour and a half away from Atlanta. And then you talk about North Carolina. It's actually a pretty good draw. Now, a game like this, usually Auburn, you know, I'm not going to say they struggle, but they don't particularly dominate in the way I would think. Like, let's just say if Alabama played North Carolina, I think it would probably be Alabama would be picked to win by 2 touchdowns. But you take a game like this is a scary game for the Auburn Tigers. North Carolina came probably a coaching decision away from beating Clemson last year. They've had a pretty good run. They've always been able to do a decent job of recruiting there. So this is definitely not a game that Auburn can even begin to try to look past as they get ready for SEC play a couple of weeks down the road after this one.
After taking in North Carolina's win over Temple in their bowl game, a blowout, a complete domination, 55-13, I started to dig into the prospects for 2020. And again, Sam Howell coming off a 38 touchdown season, a guy that had enough wherewithal as a true freshman to step on the field in week 1, down 2 scores against South Carolina in the fourth quarter and lead a comeback to a victory. Post a number of impressive showings in the fourth quarter, had a 4th and 18 completion when they needed it against Miami to pull out a game in September at home. And again, had a tremendous season. Has his 3 top playmakers back: Bo Corrales, De'Ami Brown, Daz Newsome. Both their running backs, who gained close to 1,000 yards, are back. They lost their all-ACC center, but besides that, the offensive line comes back. Most of their top producers in regards to tackles for loss and sacks are back on defense. So, yeah, they look to be the team to beat in their division.
And you know, the great part about this, you talk about their competitive edge in their particular division and how they play ball. They played at a very high level, especially towards the end of the season, and able to get all of those guys back. It's going to be a huge challenge for the Auburn defense, who has KJ Britt returning at that middle linebacker position. They like to call him the Mike linebacker at Auburn, and he's probably going to be projected to be a first-team all-SEC player, maybe a dark horse for All-American. He's going to have to be the one to anchor this particular defense, especially one who's losing Marlon Davidson and Derek Brown, but have a lot of talent returning at the defensive line position. But also Auburn is going to be losing a lot at the secondary with Noah Igbenogany declaring early for the NFL draft and having to find ways to supplement those positions. That's why I think, and that's why I mentioned this on the back end, that North Carolina and Auburn is going to be a huge game for the Tigers, because it's going to really tell up really quick how well Auburn is going to be able to supplement the big losses from the from this past year on defense, especially. But I think offensively, with the offensive line for Auburn, I mean, they have to be elite. I mean, even if they were, if they have to break even at best, because the offensive line just did not play well last year. And, you know, they have a lot of talent coming back. They've done a great job in this past recruiting class, at least trying to get guys in there, and maybe not high quality, maybe not high rated guys, but at least the kind of guys that you can work with, and a good enough sample size to at least piece together something a little bit better than what happened last year. And then you got the great, you have a lot of good skill players. Got Tank Bigsby coming as a running back. Also, you talk about DJ Williams, who I think with a good offensive line could have had a better showing last year. Although losing Boobie Whitlow, I just think Boobie Whitlow is not the prototypical SEC game-breaking back anyway. So I think Auburn is in pretty good shape there. Also, to help Bo Nix out, this is something that was needed. Auburn went out and got a few more just taller receivers. You talk about Xavion Capers and guys like that who can help Seth Williams out, and maybe a more healthier Anthony Schwartz would definitely lead to Bo Nix having a much more higher level of success coming into this season.
And again, Mac Brown, it takes over a 2-win program, wins 7 games. I think it should also be of note that in North Carolina's 6 losses, they were all by 1 score. So they were in it to the end. Nobody blew them out. You mentioned the Clemson game in which they played the Tigers tougher than anybody in the regular season, taking them down to a 21-20 game and a 2-point conversion try to try to win that one. A second in the ACC in total offense at almost 500 yards per game, second only to, of course, Clemson. Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, I referenced them earlier, 2,000 yards between them at the running back position. So North Carolina is a no joke suddenly under Mac Brown, and he flat out stated during this offseason, he said, hey, my first year, our goal was to get to a bowl game. We accomplished that. We won the bowl game. This year, we want to win the ACC. Flat out stated it out there, even with Clemson in the same league. That's our goal, is to win the ACC. This obviously doesn't play into that. It's a non-conference game, but certainly will be a measuring stick for both teams, and one that Auburn has been ready to play the last 2 years against the likes of Washington and Oregon. So in terms of a setting and atmosphere at this point in the season, meaning week 1, at least the Tigers are used to playing in this kind of game and playing very well, very tight games, both against the Huskies and the Ducks, and we're able to pull both of them out.
Well, see, the thing is kind of like a equally opposite type deal. They came out really strong against Washington, and then allowed Washington. As a matter of fact, they won that game against Washington in the same manner. As a matter of fact, the same way that they won against that Washington surrendered the lead and allowed Auburn to come back and win that particular football game. It was kind of the same way that Oregon got off to I'm talking about an incredibly dominant start against Auburn. All indications going into the middle of the third quarter said that Oregon probably should have 2-scored Auburn in that particular football game. But the defense really started to clamp down, got some big breaks, started to get a little pressure on Justin Herbert. And next thing you know, Bo Nix throws a pass to Eli Stove where the defense wasn't ready. And all of a sudden, Auburn is back in that game 21-13 with an opportunity to win at the last moment in that particular game. Auburn has done a great job over the years of being prepared for these types of games. And I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I think Auburn should win the football game. Of course, I'm going to say that. But North Carolina really is going to pose a huge challenge for Auburn in this game.
All right. Again, if you love Auburn football and want to get in depth, you check out Vernon Speaks Sports right here on YouTube, talking Auburn football with recruiting at the forefront and rising from the 50 range to the top 20 in college football in the recruiting rankings just in the last month. And of course, a huge date against North Carolina. And we're all starting to get excited for the season, knowing that things are starting to break. They're starting to be put plans into place in regards to getting athletes back on campus. And August camp looks like it's a strong probability at this point. So we appreciate you stopping by, as always, to break down the Auburn Tigers.
I definitely appreciate it, Mark. We'll see you soon. War Eagle.